Hello, Western Civ 104. I just want to say that the Sunday paper that we just finished up on comparing the Eastern and the Western Roman empires, that this class, I think, it seems to me, in my memory, you all really nailed down the differences in a way that many of my other classes had struggled with really pointing out the differences, and you all did a great job of really just getting the main points of the differences between the two. So good job is my point that I want to say on that. And I'm going to just briefly say something about the BBC documentary that I'm having you watch, and we're covering Islam. And I just want to take a few moments to kind of have a discussion about talking about Islam in today's modern political discourse. First of all, let me just state that I also focused on Asia and the Islamic world in my undergrad work at UC Santa Cruz as well. So I just want to make that really clear up front. But just like the Cold War years, when it came to writing about certain topics during the Cold War, it was hard to find nuance, to find somebody to talk about what was happening in China, with Mao, or talk about Fidel in Cuba, in a neutral, or maybe if not neutral, at least again nuanced, with a certain amount of making points that don't necessarily have an agenda, simply telling the history as it is. This is difficult for the historian no matter what, but when there's conflicts and there's heavy amounts of ideology floating around in the ether, it gets difficult to find neutral, or again, the word nuance is what I want to use. And for some of you, that might be a new word. Look it up, nuance. Okay, it's something that we don't get in any of our media nowadays. So when it comes to Islam, I saw there was a presentation that I think that was put together in Oxford or somewhere, also on the British television, with the question. Well, actually, it was a debate: is Islam a religion of peace? And one group was saying no, and the other one yes. And I thought this was the most ridiculous debate that already started off with the wrong premise. Think about the history we've been learning thus far. And if you said, is Christianity a religion of peace? Well, was it peace with Constantine and the drama that's been happening within the Eastern and Western empires? If we said that it wasn't peace, does that really reflect what Christianity is? I just don't like that kind of topic because it's misleading to even start from that presupposition, in my opinion. And what we also have is you have people who are trying to write. It makes sense if you are a devout Muslim, you're going to tell the story of Islam to promote it as the truth of the right way. And so you can find those kind of sources, and then you have a lot of Islamophobic sources. On the internet, I've explored all of these options. You have experts on everything wrong and bad that ever came out of Islam, and I'm very well aware of a good chunk of all these arguments and what I see in this discourse back and forth. Now, this BBC documentary is more or less painting the picture of Islam in a positive light and its legacy on Europe in a positive way. It's mainly accurate in terms of the legacy that the Islamic world left on the European world, and the contributions that come into Europe through the Islamic world. So that part, the documentary is very solid. I do think that there's a little bit at times painting a picture of things being a little bit more cozy than they were. Keep in mind that when you cover Islamic Spain, we're talking about centuries centuries, about 800 years of Islamic rule. And in that time period, there were some regimes that were quite repressive and awful to Christians and Jews and other minority groups, and to even other Muslims. And then you had a good chunk of that time that things were actually quite amicable. So even, when people talk about Islam in Spain, that's kind of looked as like the kind of perfect utopian place where Muslims, Jews, and Christians all got along, and that was not always the case, but it was mainly the case. I think that's a fair argument. But again, I'm not sure. I watched this documentary several times, and I'm not quite sure if I remember it really covering any of the negative parts that ever came in there. So I'm just pointing that out. For the most part, you're getting really solid information, but it is trying to put things more in a positive light. And I don't find that necessarily bad, but as the historian, I like to point out, there's always bumps in the road and ebbs and flows of things. So if you have any questions about the information that you're seeing, if you've watched things on the internet that you have been influenced by and you want to question what you saw, or you even question some of the things that I'm saying or the things that are in the video, please communicate with me on this. That's what I'm here for. I'm not the world expert on it, but I do have a lot of knowledge in regards to this topic. So, that's all I have to say. I hope you guys are all having a great week. We're just starting Monday, and I'm heading off to my other job now. In any case, we will be in touch.